This morning, we're continuing our walk through Acts, and we get to explore the beautiful picture of a riot. But before we get into that, I just want to take a moment or two and reflect on this. I know, are you getting tired of it? Good. I don't, because if you said yes, I don't care. Because we need to keep reading. And this morning I've got up here, these are the stories on which we have built our life. These are the stories that guide our lives, give meaning to our lives. Keep reading these stories. But I want to point out that I've heard from a couple of you, this is hard. This is full of weird names and weird places, and I don't care about the land. Why is this such a... Let me address that just real quickly, just for a moment before we start preaching. And I want to point this out. I've got this going on. Sorry. I know that you're scarred and you can't unsee that. But here's the reality. I am facing a struggle with my health. I want to get it back. It's really easy to lose it. All you have to do is nothing. But if you want to get it back, you got to put some work into it, right? And even the athlete, the trained athlete, has got to work to stay strong. And that means sometimes doing stuff that's hard. The thing is, preachers do an awful lot of sitting, and that isn't really good for your health. I do way too much sitting. So, to address that, I've started swimming, okay? I look just like that guy. Or maybe more like that guy. But anyway, I am working to restore my health. It is not easy, and when I'm doing it, I'm winded, I'm exhausted, and I don't like it. So what? Because I like that more than I like dying. And so I'm working to reclaim what I've lost. I'm working to build up what I am so that I can be stronger. Last week, I swam 1.75 miles. Yeah, well, thank you. It's not what I was going for. My point is that I've committed to doing the hard thing. And I'm putting that in front of you because I'm encouraging you to keep doing the hard thing. Nothing worth doing is easy. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. And if you don't have to keep at something, then what good is it? The faithful reading of the Word will change us from one degree of glory to another. Interact with God regularly, and God will heal what's broken in you. So, these are the stories that direct and guide our lives. Stay in these stories. Commit yourself. We're talking about 15 minutes a day, folks. That's about how long it takes to read this. It might hurt. It might be hard. It might be boring. I don't care. Swim in the Word of God. Get into it. I got a couple more announcements real quick. If you enjoyed our song service this morning, that's our connection to BBC. Palmetto Bible Camp. We ought to be connected there. So if you are a young person, go to 4th week. We want to stir the connection. That's from 8 to 18. Head down there. The Ethans plan to be there. It's going to be a great, good time. Go to camp. And also, while I'm talking to the young folks, we got a youth event coming up what did I say? Well, yeah, that's wrong. Don't pay attention to that. And I'd like to point out I didn't do that. Just throw Ethan under the bus. Yeah, it's April 15th, and I got this from an old picture. Sorry about that. April the 15th. If you are a youth, if you like to eat, if you have a fork and will travel, come to this event. It's going to be good. I promise. So, come to this. April the 15th, and what time we meet here? 5 o'clock right here. It's going to be great. Okay, so let's get into our sermon for today. And we're going to look at how to start a riot in 4 easy steps. Okay? This is actually Word of God, folks. If you want to know how to start a riot, He's going to show you exactly how to get it done. Okay? So pay close attention. You might want to take notes. So, this is the story. There arose at that time no small disturbance concerning the way. And I'm going to go ahead and do what I usually do with this whole sermon right here, and then we're going to move away from it. I want to point out that the way, that's Christianity. And it was so engaged in its culture that it started not one but many riots. This is the one we get the most detail about. But there's several riots, aren't there? Several of these trouble spots. They were so engaged that the world noticed. And I just wonder if the folks who believe that Jesus is going to come and whip all the people up into heaven, what is that called? The rapture. If the rapture were to happen and we suddenly weren't here, would they notice? Would anyone know we were gone? This church started a riot. They were engaged in the people around them and courageously engaged enough that it impacted on the economic system of the city. Do we? Are we engaged at all? Engagement's hard. You often are going to engage in people who are going to bite you and not like you. They might even start a riot. At least they notice. But that's the only time I'm going to touch on that. It says, for a man named Demetrius, by the way, this is not the Demetrius who worships here and right now is off at rally, he's celebrating. That's not him. Okay, this is different Demetrius. Wish he was here because I wanted to make that joke. Anyway, the man named Demetrius, a silversmith who made silver shrines of Artemis, brought no little business to the craftsmen, and these he gathered together with the workmen in similar trades. Now you listening? Because this is where he starts the riot stuff. He said, men, you know that from this business we have our wealth. We get rich because of this stuff. And what is he doing there? Well, the first thing that you got to do if you want to start a riot is you have to establish an us. You need we versus them. You need a very clear them and a very clear us. See, if you listen to God, He's going to tear those barriers down. You won't have an us and them anymore. You're going to love everybody if you follow Jesus. But if you want to start a riot, it's very useful if you can get people to believe in an us. Get them to believe in a we. We establish our wealth from this, guys. This is who we are. We are this, okay? That's step one. Step two, and you see in here that not only in Ephesus, but in almost all of Asia, Paul has persuaded and turned away a great many people, saying gods made with hands are not gods. Okay, so what Paul has done, he's been teaching in the school of Tyrannus for like 3 years, or 2 years, sorry, and he's spread the gospel through that school. Preachers have gone out all over the place, and this is part of their message. There is one true God, and the one true God has sent the Christ to save you. And so don't follow these other gods, follow God. Love everybody, even if they follow other gods, but don't follow the gods with them. You follow the one true God, you obey His voice. That's what he's been doing. So what is he doing here? Well, step two is to establish a villain. You need a bad guy. Somebody to get worked up about. If you want things to really get going well, you need to be able to point at somebody or a group of somebodies and say, now there's your problem over there. Pay attention to them. Don't incidentally look at yourself at all. Don't be reflective. Don't see whether you're part of the problem. No, just look at them. Look at them over there. Aren't they bad? They are bad persons. They're stinky. Okay, so once you've established that, great. We can move to the next step. And there is danger not only to this trade of ours may come into disrepute. Now what's he doing there? Well, play upon the fears of the people you want to use. If you want to get a riot going, you need to get people scared. Because scared people don't pay attention to reason. Frightened people, threatened people, people who are worried, and if you can hit them in their pocketbook, that's the best place to get people anxious. Stir up their insecurity about their ability to feed their kids. Oh, that's such a good way to go about it. So Demetrius is brilliant. He said, not only will we come into disrepute, what's that mean? We won't be able to sell anything anymore. And if we can't sell, there goes our wealth. We right now are really rich dudes, but what Paul is doing is undermining that. Aren't you mad about that? Can I get a harumph? Come on, let's get mad about it. Let's get worried about it. Let's get scared. Although you never tell them to get scared. You tell them, look how much danger you're in. Look at how bad things could go. And put as bad a worst-case scenario out there as you possibly can. I wish Demetrius had been right, and Paul would have completely converted everyone everywhere, but is there any chance that Demetrius was right? I mean, he's big-time exaggerating. I mean, it would take lifetimes before Demetrius' fear would be actualized. But he's got them afraid. And you don't want people to think, now wait a minute, Demetrius, you mean to tell me that you think this guy's going to convert everybody? Is he going to get you too? You get them that worst case scenario, get them worried, get them scared. And then once you've done this, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis may be counted as nothing, and that she may even be dispossessed from her magnificence, she whom all Asia and the world worship. And what's he doing there? Well, he's given them a principle that's big. Some big principle. Patriotism works great. Religion works great. And you bring this principle and you say it's threatened if the villain wins. If they get their way, everything's going to fall apart. Everything. And now you've got them lodged with that principle that's really important to them. And now their action is in defense of a principle. Their action, and what's not acceptable? If the goddess Artemis is threatened, what can they not do? So you got them afraid, you've got them worried, you've got them angry even, because threaten that and you'll get people ticked off. Threaten their bedrock principles and they'll get really mad in a really big hurry. You're done. As a matter of fact, that fourth one is the most important factor in the whole mess. All that other stuff is just to lead up to that fourth one. If you've got to get them to foam at the mouth a little bit first, then you establish the villain and you get them afraid and then you get them angry. But if all that work's already done, you don't have to. Just have a symbol of something important, something that matters to them. You don't need anything else. They'll go burn down the town. And it's be done. A few things you want to make sure that you don't do. Do not appeal to reason or encourage reason. If you want to be able to use people, you can't have them thinking. You have to have them feeling. If you get them afraid, get them angry, those are emotions. Do not get their intellectual faculties involved. Because if they do, they might start reflecting and you'll lose all your power. So don't appeal to that. Do not allow time for them to cool off. Whatever it is has got to be done right now. We've got to strike while the iron is hot. And which iron? Well, you're the iron and I've got you hot, so let's strike. You can't allow people to think. You can't allow them to cool off. Because if they do, then everything that you just did might go pfft. So if you want to get that fight going, if you want to get the riot going, move them fast. You don't seek to solve problems, but use the problem to your advantage and to get your way. The last thing you want is actually to say, how can we reconcile with that person? No. Or how can we understand that other person? See, Demetrius is not interested in understanding Paul at all. And he doesn't want to talk to Paul. If he did, Paul might persuade him to use his metal arts for better things. It's not as if that skill is going to be suddenly lost if he came to Christ. That man can make a huge income, maybe a better income, be more blessed by God if he actually was cooperative. Don't do that. Do not in any way engage the enemy. Make them an unapproachable enemy and keep them alienated and far away so that you can be mad at them. Not think of them as a person. And if you do that, then you can use that other person as the reason why things got to get fixed around here. We got to solve this. And I got to get my way. Is any of this sounding familiar at all? Do not love the enemy or allow the villain to be a person in anybody's eyes. If you do that, you will lose your riot. If I can look at that other person and say, I understand your flaws. Or if I can look at that other person and say, I want to see things from your point of view. If I do that at all, I can't hate them anymore. And if I can't hate them, I can't flip cars over and set them on fire. And the goal is to flip the cars over. That we want to pull down the lampposts. We want to burn down a building or two. So do not, under any means, encourage love and thinking and reason and reconciliation. Just don't do that. If you want to start a riot, Do those other 4 things. Don't do these 4. Make sense? And that's the lesson. No, boom, riot. You get the riot if you do these things. And I just want to read our way through and see this. You saw what Demetrius did to get it started. And look at this. Look for the spirit here. Now you'll see there's ... I've popped a verse out. We'll deal with that one later. But look at what happens here. It says, when they heard this, they were enraged. Good job. He did exactly what he needed to get him there. And they were crying out, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians!" And so the city was filled with confusion. And they rushed together into the theater, dragging with them Gaius and Aristarchus, Macedonians that were Paul's traveling companions. So if you couldn't find Paul, get a couple of villains anyway, and we can throw these villains out in front, and we can eat them alive. That's what we want to do. So now some cried out one thing and some another, for the assembly was in confusion. Most of them didn't even know why they had come together. Because here you got people across town going, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians, great is Artemis of the Ephesians, great is Artemis of the Ephesians, great is Artemis." Whoa, I like Artemis. What's going on? Let's go. And they all run together. And they're all in there and they're shouting, "Ah, great, great, great." Weird. Some of the crowd prompted Alexander, whom the Jews put forward. And Alexander, motioning with his hands, wanted to make a defense to the crowd. But when they recognized that he was a Jew, which means he agrees with Paul about this whole "they aren't gods" thing, for about 2 hours, they all cried out in unison, in one voice, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians! Great is Artemis of the Ephesians! Great is Artemis of the Ephesians!" By the way, it's only up to 8, so I can do this for 2 hours if you want me to. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. They're all shouting. Do you see how effective he's been? I mean, Demetrius has done a beautiful job here. You've got groupthink, hive-think, nobody really thinking, everybody feeling. When someone gets up and says, "Hey, Can I calm us down?" "No, you can't. You're part of the villains." Rah! I mean, it's exactly what you want humanity to be, isn't it? Now, it's important to know if you're going to start a riot, you probably need to know how to end a riot. Because riots can be really bad things. Once they get going, who knows? People are probably going to die. Usually they do. Looks like in this one nobody did. That's amazing given what they were doing. But if you're going to end it, you probably need to know how. So you got the city clerk. He said, when the town clerk had quieted the crowd, he said, "Men of Ephesus, who is there who does not know that the city of the Ephesians is the temple keeper of the great Artemis?" Just a word or two about that. That temple was one of the 7 wonders of the world. It was a place where people who were in danger could flee to find refuge, and they'd be protected as long as they stayed in the temple. It was a banking center. It was a place where if you had money and you wanted it held and you wanted to get interest, you could take it to Ephesus and you could put it into the temple of the Ephesians and you'd get interest back on your money. It was a place where you could buy stuff. It was a place where you could buy food. It was this huge complex. And the town clerk is going, "Guys, it's still open for business. What are you freaking out about? Everyone knows we've got this. Now calm down. And we are keepers of the sacred stone that fell from the sky," which is why the thing was in Ephesus, a meteorite. And if you saw this thing, you'd know why why it became a god. And I could explain that more, but we got kids in the room, so I'm not going to go any further than that. "Seeing that these things cannot be denied, you ought to be quiet and do nothing rash." He's telling them, calm down. And then he says, "For you have brought these men here who are neither sacrilegious nor blasphemers of our goddess. Your charges aren't true. They're not doing this. If therefore Demetrius and the craftsmen have any complaint against anyone, the courts are open and there are proconsuls. Let them bring charges against one another. But if you seek any further, it shall be settled in the regular assembly, not by riot." He's saying, this has got to stop. "For we really are in danger of being charged with rioting today, since there is no cause and we can give no justification for this commotion." And what's the danger of a charge by riot? Well, the Romans didn't put up with rioting cities. If you riot, you're going to see a whole bunch of executions. They're just going to come in and wipe out a whole bunch of people. And it could even be random. The term decapitation, the removal of heads, also has the word 10 in it. And the Romans were big practicers of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, kill him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, kill him. You want to dispirit a people, that's how you do it. And he's going, dude, we are in danger. All of us. Cut it out. So what did he do? I'm sorry, and when he had said these things, he dismissed the assembly. Well, you offer facts that contradict the narrative that started the riot. If you want to end a riot, get people thinking about the facts. Because riots are emotional things. You know, fights, conflicts, they're emotional things. And get people to think again with reason. And very often, the bitterness goes away and they start going, why was I behaving like that? Also, you appeal to reason and help people to see that they're being irrational. You demonstrate other solutions, like the proconsuls and the courts are open. They can bring charges. They don't need to do this. Of course, Demetrius knows it's a losing case. That's why he's not using those methods. He wanted to burn down the town rather than do that. And remind people that rioting is bad and can result in just punishment. All right? So that's what the city clerk did. Isn't that an amazing thing that happened there? And it's a useful skill to have if you want to have it. You can get people worked up, and people groups that are upset are great tools to use to get your way. You get people really afraid and get them moving, get them really mad, get them moving. And there are reasons why I can say that this year, right? You're watching that happen, aren't you? It's happening in front of us. Now, you might ask, why do we care? Because this is not, generally speaking, for most of us, a terribly useful skill. The ability to start a riot is something that, well, now wait a minute, last Monday I could have, No, I don't think I use that much. So why is this in the Word of God? Why do I need this? Well, because it shows us a whole bunch of really sinful stuff. This whole mess, this whole way of using power, this whole way of using people, this whole way of approaching a conflict to get your way through manipulation and coercion and secretive behavior and the gathering together of groups, it's just ugly. It's full of this stuff. It's full of, first of all, you got to lie to people. You got to twist and distort things. You got to stir up their bad emotions. You got to get them really freaked out. The whole thing is just a mess. And honestly, we ought not touch it. I want to point out that, and I popped the verse out where he shows up. There's 2 Christians that have been named in this whole story. This is not a Christian story. This is not a story about the behavior of Christians. And it ought not be us. It is in the way of the world to encourage us to hate one another. That's the tools being used here. Us and them, fight, evil, get mad, get upset, get worried, get afraid. Be a ringleader and stir that up and turn them loose on each other. If you want to be eaten by the earth. Because this is not the ways of God. Boy, it's a good thing that we never have to appeal to this junk in church. I asked earlier, does any of this sound familiar? Generally speaking, a church of 200 or so people doesn't riot. We aren't going to get the whole city into an amphitheater somewhere where we're going to shout, great as whatever my opinion is. But these same things show up anytime a person's heart is bent against another and they act out of anxiety and they stir up groups. Have you been in a church? Have you ever seen churches? I tell you, I've seen churches do this exact same stuff. They use exactly the methods of Demetrius. I'm mad at the leadership and they're villains. And look, we all want this kind of song to be sung or something. We all want this thing to go this way. And they're not doing it, and so we will come and we'll get our group together and we'll go storm the gates. We'll bring our torches and our pitchforks and we'll show that we're really mad and we'll demand answers and we'll make them sit down. And do you ever see this kind of stuff? We end up in Ephesus writ small, but not the Christian part of Ephesus. And we end up with behaviors that ought never be a part of God's people. We get worried and upset, and instead of looking to solve the problem, instead of looking to come together and love your enemy the way Christ told you to, because remember, it's not your enemy, it's your brother, it's your sister. We forget that. We forget the bonds of family, the meal of family that pulls us together. And we say, I don't want you because you're bad and I don't like it. And oh man, we foam. Brothers and sisters, it ought not be. The ways of Demetrius the silversmith ought not exist in churches, but they do. But now I will show you a more excellent way. Because there is a more excellent way than this. This is the verse I popped out. It said, when Paul wished to go in among the crowd, the disciples would not let him. And even some of the Asiarchs, who were friends of his, sent to him and were urging him not to go venture into the theater. Remember what's going on in there? It's dangerous. Who's the villain? Paul. But did you see these words? When Paul wished to go in among the crowd? You want to what? What did you want to do? Are you crazy, Paul? Yes, he's crazy. He's crazy with love. Because I guarantee you, I'm not a mind reader, it's not in the text, but I'll tell you what I know was in Paul's head. The whole town's in there? The whole town? I can talk to them all at once? I can share the gospel with the whole town? Let me in, please. And his friends are going, dude, they will rip you apart. I don't care. I love those people. I know they hate me, but I love them and I want to share the gospel with them. Let me at them, please. And the Asiarchs are like, Paul, we're not Christians. We're telling you, stop it. If you go in there, they will kill you, and frankly, I like you. Don't do that. But do you see what's in the heart of this man? Do you see how alien it is from Demetrius? Demetrius cares about himself and his wealth and his money and his way. And Paul cares about the people. Paul cares about loving the other guy. And so, all of that mess that you see in a riot is trumped for Paul with love. It is love that helps us to put away distortion. It is love that helps us to put away being enemies and making hate and anger the center of who we are. It is love that makes us to shun manipulation. It is love that makes us reasonable. It is love that helps us to put away irrationality, that puts away the distortion of the other person that you have made a villain in your heart. It is loving the other person that protects us from the small riots that we participate in when church gets ugly. It is love. And love will say, I'll lay down my life. Tear me apart if you want to, but I'm going to love you. I don't care what you do to me. If I have the opportunity to be good to you, I want to take it. And love is so powerful that when it's being stupid, it has to be restrained. They have to hold Paul back from loving these people because that's who Paul is. Because Paul is a follower of Jesus Christ. Now, the big point of this whole story, I think, this whole sermon, is the reality that there are some ways that are simply verboten to Christians. We're just not allowed to do them. That manipulative junk that so often shows up in church, especially when church has got to deal with a problem. And there's a big reason a lot of people don't want to go to church. It's because they've seen too many torches. And whether those torches were coming at them or whether they were just observers of it, they were like, I don't want to be a part of that. And they leave. May it never be so here. Let us have the wisdom that comes from above, that is first of all pure and it's peace-loving and it's rational and reasonable and it's willing to reason with the other and it sows peace to reap righteousness. Let's be that, not that. Because that's not following Jesus. The people who carry torches in the gospel are the people who go get him to kill him. Let's not be that. You see in this story a contrast between two ways to be human. And as you look into your own heart today, which way reigns? You know, you got the Incredible Hulk going on or David Banner? Do you have Demetrius the silversmith? Christ. This story shows us where not following Christ will take us. You want to be there? Do you want that danger in your heart? If you look into your own heart, do you see the peace? Even with those with whom you disagree, even if your disagreement is about God, can you be a person of peace anyway? Can you love? Can you want to give yourself away even to people who want to tear you apart? What do you see? When you look into your own heart, what's there? Which kind of heart do you want? I think that's why this story is in the gospel, in the book of Acts. I really do. I think it's the culmination of the mission work. We're about to head into something else. And what you see is that ultimately the mission results in revealing the sons of God, the children of God, and the children of the world. And the violence and the hate that's out there, and the peace and the love that's in us. What kind of heart do you want? And if you look into your heart today and you don't see that peace, remember that God is a heart surgeon. He takes out hearts of stone and He puts in hearts of flesh. So if your heart needs to change, give it to the Lord. And if you need it, we'll pray for you. Forgiveness is here, and redemption and transformation, they are all in the hands of our God. It may be that you came this day and you carry with you a burden, a weight on you that has nothing to do with the topics I've talked on. That's fine. We will want to pray for you too. And if you're not a Christian, I meant what I said. There's no better way of life than following Jesus. There's water right here, and I'd love to talk with you about why. If this morning you're subject to the invitation of God, why don't you let us know while we stand and sing.